Venom number 29, legacy number 229 is the origin of Meritus. That's right. For those of you who don't know, Meritus is a version of Eddie Brock. He's an incarnation of Eddie Brock, and Venom by Al Ewing is really good. It's kind of a mind fuck, if you will. It's very trippy, dealing with timelines because we know that Eddie Brock in this volume 5 of Venom, in the original or the first issue, Eddie Brock's body, it died, it passed away, right? He was caught in an explosion. It was a hit, it was an attack, and his body perished, but his mind jumped into the time stream because at that time Eddie Brock was the King in Black, and we all know, which I missed that story arc, that storyline, because I wasn't collecting comics at that. I started shortly after, but Eddie Brock had developed the powers of Null. He had basically ascended to godhood, and so he had the ability to, which he did learn after the passing of his mortal body, to jump into the time stream. Well, this here, we're going to learn about the origin of Meritus. You see the person in the below. This cover art's really cool. Kind of reminds me of like Stranger Things, right? For those of you who like Stranger Things, it's kind of like the upside down in this particular cover art here. But Meritus is kind of like not the final form that Eddie Brock becomes, but he's, I guess, the villain version, and he's so far disconnected from Eddie Brock that he basically is this kind of like omnipotent kind of like symbiote god. He's basically a conqueror. It's kind of like Meritus is kind of like, imagine like Venom and Kang the Conqueror. So he's has that same demeanor and attitude and ambition and like lust for conquest. And he's basically created this, what he calls the Garden of Time, where the kings in black basically reside. But each one of them, there's about 6 of them that are there, and they're all Eddie Brock. So this is a real mind trip and a real mind fuck, but I'm going to try to explain it the best I can. But this here is the origin of Meritus, which is set to be a really, really good one. So let's dive in. Now pay close attention to what Meritus says. Look at those cavemen go. Okay. Now the narration bubbles are coming from the Eddie Brock on the left. Now all 3 of these individuals here are Eddie Brock. The one in the middle right there with the weird fucking helmet on, that's Meritus, kind of the like evil version, if you will. But these all are kings in black. Now the one to his left, his name is Tyro. He's the one that's doing the narration, and he basically is kind of obsessed with Meritus. He wants to learn from him. He wants to become him, if you will. But Meritus is kind of gatekeeping secrets and of the universe and things like that. And we're going to learn that Meritus actually learns a lot of what he knows and different things from Kang the Conqueror. So basically, the narration continues from Tyro, you see on the left there. Now, Tyro is having self reflection, and basically, he wants to warn Meritus. Like I said, he kind of looks up to Meritus, but he wants to warn him. He wants to warn him that there's 6 Eddie Brocks in the Garden of Time, this area that they're in right now. But Tyro has a flashback to a memory from some kind of ghoul or demon. He says a demon's laugh. And the demon in limbo, because Eddie Brock was in limbo during the Dark Web crossover event. And the demon tells Eddie Brock that basically time is wrapped in limbo, and it can have more than one track. So the Tyro wants to tell this to Meritus, but in typical fashion in this relationship dynamic, Meritus is seen as the superior. He believes that he is, and he is in power and in status. So he basically, and you can even see here in heightened stature, the way he looks down on Tyro in a very condescending fashion, basically reminds him, and he goes, you know what, I don't like about you, or what reminds me of you, is that you're just so pathetic. And he just basically kind of scolds him, belittles him, tells him, just do what you're told, you fucking lapdog. Shut up. I have more important things to deal with than sitting here and listening to whatever the hell you have to tell me. It's kind of like if your younger sibling is tugging at your arm, your sleeve, and like, hey, I have something important to tell you. And in your mind, you're like, what could really be that fucking important that my younger sibling has to tell me? I'm older than them, I'm smarter than them. So Meritus kind of dismisses it, but pay close attention, people, because that memory that Tyro had is very important. It's going to come back. He's the demon in limbo said time is wrapped in limbo and it can take more than one track. Now, here things start to get kind of trippy. So, Tyro is walking throughout the Garden of Time, and he's basically in deep self thought and basically saying that he's tried to get Meritus to teach him certain secrets relating to his destiny, who he is. They're all versions of Eddie Brock, but basically, Tyro is going to take control of his own destiny here. He says that he's not going to wait on some future version of himself to, extend kindness. Right now, this is um, very I like the character structure of Tyro. He does in a way seem like the younger sibling, right? He kind of almost seems like he has pure intentions. I'll keep that in mind. He has seemingly pure intentions, and Meritus is kind of an asshole to him and the rest of the Eddie Brocks or the rest of the Kings in Black. Mind you, these are all Kings in Black, but Meritus is kind of the King of Kings in Black, I guess, if you will, or perhaps because of the secrets that he knows, which we're about to learn how he found them out. He does deem himself as their superior, and so basically he has been kind of shunned, right, by that older sibling in Meritus, and you kind of almost feel bad for Tyro, right? He's like this kind of like sad, sickly like puppy that just wants love and affection and stuff like that. So he jumps in this black symbiote goo venom pool here to kind of throw himself in the deep end of the time stream, right? This is where it gets fucking trippy, and I'm going to try to explain it, but he jumps in the time stream because he's searching for the secrets that Meritus won't teach him. Okay, so basically, Tyro, when he jumps in that venom pool, this is where it takes him. And again, Stranger Things reference, because when he dives in the pool, it's like he ends up somewhere upright, and that is he ends up in the heart of the Garden of Time. This is the engine room, guys. This is where you see this black hand coming into frame now. That is the eventuality. This is the seventh Eddie Brock Tyro was referring to when he mentioned that the demon in limbo had told him about all times in limbo, and that all time, they have different tracks. Now this hand, like from the Adams family, it's Eddie Brock. It's called the eventuality because eventually all these versions of Eddie Brock will become this thing. Now this is the engine room. It's called the engine room because it's where the work is done. The engine room is where the work is done. And basically the purpose of this hand, if you will, is eternal servitude. It's to basically maintain eternity itself from darkness, from the void. That's what the King in Black is all about: the darkness, the void, the nothingness. And so this is really, really just profound and exciting. I think so, is because it's just so deep. It's such a fucking mind fuck, and there's just so many layers to uncover. But when you do, it's so rewarding to kind of even grasp what's going on here with just time and which track are they on. But basically, this Tyro guy, he's in this pool of slush, like we see Eddie Brock back in Venom issue number 18 was in the same pool of slush after he arrived there from Limbo. And Eddie Brock, coming to this realization, he also had a conversation with the eventuality. And as you see there, the eventuality had kind of 5 light orbs on each of its fingertips and its thumb, and those represented questions that Eddie Brock could ask of it to find out certain information. And at the end of that issue, Eddie Brock basically was also enlightened and realized that his human body was his and his alone to command and maintain, even though the actual real Eddie Brock as he knew it in human form was past, was dead, but his physical body was still his to command as he's this godly king in black entity, if you will. So it's kind of funny because he decided he knew what he had to do, which was return to Earth in his body and basically kick his own ass, which was Bedlam at that time. Now Tyro frantically jumps out of that pool and back into the time stream, if you will, out of the engine room, and he yells, "No!" He doesn't want it. And what's funny is no one who went to the engine room, once they learned of the eventuality and that they would eventually be there, they didn't want that role. They didn't want the responsibility, right? With great responsibility or with great power comes great responsibility. It was a heavy burden to carry, right? I mean, maintaining eternity itself. That sounds like, imagine if like you were told at the age of like 10 or 12 that you were just going to work forever, right? Or no, not even that. Imagine like your first job and you're in 6 months, right? And you're like, whatever. I kind of don't like this. Maybe I can get some new job. I'm like a teenager. But imagine like something or God was like, you're going to work this like forever. Like this is it. Just fucking eternal servitude to like fucking Safeway or something like that. Like you're gonna be bagging these groceries all eternity. You're immortal. Like you would run out of the job too, screaming like no, and trying to find some fortune teller or something to change your fate. Well, that's exactly what Tyro did. He's in the time stream and he's trying to remember now. Like in one of my other Eddie Brock variations, like I tried to change my fate, this eventuality. Who told me I couldn't do it or who helped me? And then he remembered, oh, time, conqueror, conqueror of time. It was Kang. It was Kang the fucking conqueror. So now Tyro needs to find Kang. And if you want to find Kang the conqueror, he needs to find someplace in time where there's a conquest. So Eddie Brock finds him a conquest in some time stream, some planet where there's no sentient real humanoids, but these like lizards that are fucking crawling around there, and eventually, like over millennia, they grow opposable thumbs and shit like that. I don't know what that's what the narration says, but anyway, these battleships that resemble like Star Wars fighter jets or Kangs, of course, and they're blasting and shooting, and I'm assuming decimating and eradicating all life on this planet. Hence, conquest and conqueror. And Kang is there, and you see two kind of venom-like soldiers side by side of Kang. And here's Tyro, very creepily, just like shoves his head out of the chest of this symbiote because, of course, Eddie Brock, being King in Black, he controls the hive mind and communicates with all symbiotes. So he doesn't know yet, though, if he and Kang have met in this point in time. Kang replies that no, we have not met. But you've caught me in a good mood, right? You've caught me in a good mood. So basically, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. I can help you if you give me something. Well, Tyro is like, all right, but I don't know what you would want from me. And now remember this scene here, you guys. This book, Al Ewing and the illustrators did an amazing job. Remember these scenes because later they're going to be switched. Kang basically is telling him, I'm not going to ask you to give me anything you are not willing to offer me. So he's like, sure. So Kang then shows him like time and this big ass like transparent ball with all these little dots, kind of something you'd see in like a Men in Black movie. And each one of these little dots is a fucking galaxy. Like, could you imagine that? Like, Kang is holding like I don't even know what to call in his hand, or like it's like a diagram on a map or a hologram. But each one of those dots is like a galaxy. So it's like a universe, or yeah, it's like what the hell? So Kang is basically showing him, yeah, I got the goods and I can help you with what it is that you're trying to do. So basically Kang tells Eddie that, all this control of time or whatever can be yours if you help me. Now, he agrees. Now, the first thing he does, as you see here, is Kang teaches Eddie Brock how to regain his human face. That is very important. Keep that image in mind. The symbiote body, but Eddie Brock's face kind of like RoboCop, right? Like when he takes that fucking faceplate off and like his human face is there, but the size and everything else is like RoboCop shit. Then Kang teaches Eddie Brock, swordsmith, how to fight with a sword. All this is very, very important. Just keep this shit in mind in your head, you guys. And then we see below here, now comes time for Eddie Brock to live up to his end of the bargain. Now, this is kind of weird because this is how Kang conquers, I guess. So basically, because Eddie Brock is King in Black, communicates to the entire hive mind, basically controls all Clintars and symbiotes and shit. Basically, Kang wants like a symbiote army, if you will, like mindless, droneless fucking symbiotes. So Eddie Brock agrees, and essentially what he does is he communicates with two that are there in that current time that they're in. Then they deliver those two fucking symbiotes to Kang in a not so far past. He field tests them. Then he goes back in time and or in time in future and delivers them to a future Kang. So it's like that's what Kang does is he like finds shit and then he'll deliver the goods to his past and future selves so that they've got these like resources and advanced weaponry and shit to just completely conquer like all. So I mean that's pretty. It's a pretty cool way, and you must need like a pretty high tech like time traveling machine like with really good Wi-Fi. That's like beyond 5G. It's like 400,000 G to be able to like just time travel that fast. To be able to time travel at all. So that's kind of like the agreement there, the bargain, like this army for me helping you basically ascend and basically control your own destiny. Now, while Tyro, Eddie Brock, is training with Kang, Kang teaches him how to send his mind to wherever he wants to without possessing any kind of symbiote body. And of course, Eddie Brock is thinking about his son Dylan. Now, there's really cool things going on with Dylan, as you may know, or we're gonna find out. But Dylan is basically he's gone by the name Codex now. He's some key to unraveling or unlocking something big. But anyway, so Tyro or Eddie Brock here sends his mind just to check on Dylan and Venom, because remember the Venom symbiote and Dylan have bonded. Now get a look at this, guys. He sees the ultimate form of Venom, which is Venom World. That's right, a whole Venom fucking planet. It even looks like his face, right? The two eyes are probably like bodies of land mass or some shit, and there you see the long tongue looking like magma or lava just seeping out there. It looks really cool. Now look at this here on the left and the right. I love the like symmetry, if you will, kind of okay. But basically, uh, what ends up happening is he loses track of how long he's watching, right? He's watching Dylan and watching Venom. But when he comes back to himself there on the ship, on Kang's ship, he's not the same. Do you see that? Yes, he's transformed. Like, this is what we have to accept. That like he sent his mind to look at his son, check in on him. He comes back and he's fucking Meritus. He's transformed. I don't know how that happened, what made it happen, but if you notice the face, that this is now why Meritus has this like human face, if you will, because Kang taught Tyro how to regain the human face. It was a white face, but then the symbiote, of course, took it over, and now it's his entire body is it's black, right? It's the symbiote, and so I think this is very, very cool. He's Meritus now. It's almost kind of like when Cell from Dragon Ball Z like absorbed 17 and 18, and he reached that final perfect form. Now, Meritus, we know that's his name, is looking into the mirror and he is admiring what he sees. Eddie Brock, who's formerly in this case Tyro, is noticing that this form is a vast improvement. He's thinking more clearly, very reminiscent, like I just mentioned, the Dragon Ball Z reference of Perfect Cell. He's even more intelligent, if you will. And he now can see, he's looking again at Dylan. And notice here he doesn't say my son. He says Brock's son. That's right. He's ascended so high, this Meritus form, that he even disconnects himself from um, any parental obligation or reality, if you will. He has ascended beyond that. He wants to be beyond, maybe even a dominion, if you will. But what he says is that he has no allegiance to any of his children, the symbiote soldiers, the hive, Dylan, Brock, and even the friendships. Now remember this panel earlier, it was Kang on the left. Now the tables have turned. So Meritus is loyal only to himself, only to his lust for conquest, and is basically giving Kang the same ultimatum Kang gave him before, or the same proposition. Basically, now he has leverage. He says, "Look, I can control all of your symbiote soldiers. A huge part of your war effort and conquest depends on symbiote technology. I could simply turn your soldiers off, and that would be a huge hole in your plans." Unless you can help me. And don't worry, I'm not going to ask you anything you won't want to offer. And this brings a smile to Kang's face, and he says, "Very well done. You'll make a good conqueror yet." So we see these Star Wars battleships again, but they look different than before, and they're blasting their lasers. And Kang is in the engine room or cockpit with two of his robots, if you will, not symbiote soldiers, and he's basically updating Meritus, we can call him now, that this at this point, this is where all of the symbiotes have migrated. They have come to this place near the end of time to await the end of this reality and the birth of the next. They've come to this hive, if you will. And it seems that, and Kang is asking Meritus, "Are you sure you want to destroy them all?" Right? I mean, they're your kin, children, you have a connection to them or whatever. And Kang says, "Well, they're going to be better servants now. They're going to be better servants once I'm done with them and I cleanse." So Meritus kind of gives Kang kind of he uses reverse psychology to kind of encourage him to increase his efforts to weaken the hive, if you will. And Kang basically goes in, but there are things to which even a conqueror maybe has to, meet his day. And so this is where Meritus takes his opportunity here, you see, and he says, "Watch and learn, old friend." And he now begins to take his moment of glory. And what Meritus does is he dives into the time stream, or mentally dives in, sending his mind there into deep into the hive, because he knows that it can't be destroyed from the outside, but rather from within. And he also mentions that Kang's efforts from his ships, if you will, did do a number on the hive to weaken it. Now we see this same image, guys. Look at this. Reminiscent of what the image we saw earlier with Tyro inside of the pool and all the Tyros around him. Now, Meritus is inside of the hive, or what we know as the engine room. Now, guys, this is so fucking good. Meritus wants to destroy all of these symbiotes. He makes note that it took them a millennia to become a community, this orchestra, if you will. They're all in harmony. And he mentions they serenade the cosmos. They sing this song. They're in unison. And Meritus says that you have displeased your king with your song, so let me hear your screams. Now look at Meritus's hand. Look at his hand. That's right. I don't know, but that's a big ass hand down there, right? Very similar to what? The eventuality. But anyway, he mentions that he spent centuries with Kang. Meritus spent centuries with Kang, perfecting and mastering and honing his king in black power. And he had truly, now he's a self-proclaimed god. He said he truly had become a god. So he believed that the level to which he had developed his powers, he had become a god, a true king in black, above all king in black. And his congregation in this hive were his to destroy. Now, it's very interesting. This is very, very amazing, guys, because Al Ewing did a number on this. And this is just fun for me to just uncover and unpack and just understand the story. Meritus, if you're wondering why is he destroying these symbiotes that are like a well-oiled machine. He's destroying them because he wants to recreate the Garden of Time. That's right. He's going to create from this goo, from the black goop, he's going to create the Garden of Time. That's what he's going to do. And we get even more closed, things come more complete full circle. Here you see on the left, guys, this is reminiscent to when Eddie Brock, that's Eddie Brock, I believe Earth 616, when he came to the Garden of Time, okay? After his death in, I believe, Venom issue number 1. Now that's Eddie Brock, right? Now listen here to what Meritus is saying. He's describing the other symbiotes and their transformation, if you will. He talks about how Wild decides he prefers the winning side, whatever that means, and he returns to the garden as Tyro. Bedlam, look at this, guys. He squats in a bar somewhere. Eddie Brock fights Bedlam in a bar. Okay? His rage, he makes him shrink into Wild. Now, Wild is a version, he's kind of like the Joker or the Jester version of this King in Black, right? He has kind of like long hair. Almost imagine like Jar Jar Binks and like a symbiote. He's kind of like the frail one. And then he mentions, but the one he hates of most of all is Eddie, because Meritus blames Eddie Brock for all of this. He says he's the one that caged us. But basically, Meritus says, I have the key, and I believe that key is Dylan Brock because he now goes by Codex. So this is kind of reminiscent, going over, reliving when Eddie Brock first arrived, or this version, our version, Eddie Brock first arrived to the Garden of Time. Meritus is showing him around, and Tyro there kind of speaks for him, and then you see him getting in his face, and he basically says, "Don't you ever speak for me again." So he seems to have this kind of attitude or demeanor, if you will, or dislike towards Tyro. And that dislike surprises Meritus in this time, right? He doesn't know why he is angry with Tyro. He thought he would be more sympathetic. And even Tyro, look, guys, you sympathize with him. He apologizes to Meritus and he says, I would never disrespect you. I only want to learn from you. And he says, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Now he's self-reflecting and he says, well, there's still something that he wanted to tell me, right? Well, it must not have been that important, right? He dismisses it because he doesn't remember or recall, but he says it must not have been that important. And then he goes on with more arrogance. He says, I'm the King in Black after all, the King in Black after all, and the very pattern of destiny wields to me. Now, he probably should have listened to Tyro because you see that giant fucking ship up there? Yeah, that's a time traveling sled, okay? And you all know where that's from. In case you guys don't know, I'm going to show you a clip as to where that's from. This is the very same panel at the very start of this video, guys, except there was no sled, and Meritus was saying, look at those cavemen go. Now we're back here. This is where the time tracks, if you will, like on a train, right? It's kind of confusing, but I kind of get it, and I hope you guys have gotten it if you stuck around this far, if you go and you read these issues to better understand. But there's just different time tracks, and it's like Eddie Brock is going back and forth in time, changing through these different variations, changing into Meritus, and this is what happens, right? Trying to change his fate. But here we have from Venom, I forgot which issue. I think it was issue number 23, 24, where Doctor Doom and Eddie Brock, our Eddie Brocks from Earth 616, visit Kang the Conqueror at some point during their travel and fight through time. And Kang basically, what happens is, I believe, Eddie Brock, who had Bedlam as well at that time, gives Kang a portion of Bedlam. Now, that portion of Bedlam that he gives him, I believe, eventually turns into Rascal, who, for those of you who don't know, that was the Red Goblin that was given to Normie Osborn from Dylan Brock. Now, this sled is the very same sled that Kang gave to Eddie Brock because Doctor Doom chose to stay. Doctor Doom has his own way of time traveling. It's some kind of time base or time sled stand. So Eddie Brock took that old Fantastic Four time sled and drove it. And here you see the panel from God, I forgot which Venom this was, but this was not too long ago. So we already know what's going to happen. Is right here, Eddie Brock does come, as we saw, behind Meritus and Tyro and Wild, and he crashes that time sled onto Meritus, okay, in the Garden of Time, and you see him there, and he's basically going back in time to kill himself or kick his own ass, like he said. But this is where the timelines kind of get like a little funky for me. But this, I believe, is like current time, where he's went back in time or in the future, got that sled, and he's here, and now he has these four arms because. Remember when Meritus said that Bedlin was up in a bar somewhere? Eddie Brock, when he came back, when I showed you guys he was in that goop when he first met the eventuality, he decided to come back to Earth. The first thing he did was go to that town, to that bar, and he confronted Bedlam, and he beat up Bedlam, and they went inside of Bedlam in his mind, and Eddie Brock conquered him in his mind and absorbed him, and then he was able to transform and have those four arms, kind of like Goro from Mortal Kombat. So here you see this version of Eddie Brock, this Goro-like symbiote with four fucking arms, ready to do some damage. Now it appears he's here to, I don't know, I guess destroy these other versions of himself, these Kings in Black. I don't know what that's going to do, but this is getting really good. I really like stories in Marvel where they kind of deal with like cosmic and godhood and the beyond and time, if you will. It's very interesting. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Were you able to keep track of all of the different timelines, the time jumps, what's going on? What do you guys think of all these different variations of Eddie Brock and Venom and Meritus? Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you guys for watching. And as always, until next time, this has been Trademark Comics, and I am out.